Mike the Yellowstone Engine. Story 1. Irate Newcomer. The island of Sodor is a busy place. The engines on the island do important jobs to keep the railway running flawlessly. Gordon pulls the Wild Nor'Wester from Timoth to Barrow and Furness. Thomas runs Annie and Clarabelle on his branch line, and so on. There are many jobs Sir Topham Hatt's engines take part in, and there was no job they couldn't do. But sometimes there's too much for the engines to handle, giving Topham the opportunity to bring in new engines from far away to help with big or special jobs. On one of these days, Sodor began to find themselves in an increase of jobs recently, and Topham was fortunate to bring in a big, restored engine from America to help with the services on the island. The engine arrived at Brendam Docks one morning. He was big, tall, almost all black, with the blue running boards and golden boiler bands, and looked very strong. Sir Topham had introduced him to the engines there. "This is Mike," he declared loudly. "He's here to help with the big freight operations from the island to the mainland and back again. From many places on Sodor to the mainland outside the big city, he's the engine for the job." The engines, specifically Thomas, Percy, Rosie, Stanley, Salty, Porter, and Hank, greeted the newcomer with content and excitement. "Hello, Mike," the engine said together. The engine, however, wasn't too pleased and wasn't angry. He just gave everyone a stoic look and replied faintly, "A." Needless to say, Mike wasn't too content, nor was he upset. Topham then told Thomas, Percy, Rosie, and Stanley to show Mike around the island before his first run. They showed him many places, like the many stations, including Knapford, Kildane, Vickerstown, and etc., as well as a few freight yards to pick up and set down cars. They all stopped their touring when they arrived at the coaling plant, ready to prepare Mike's first job, taking coal to the mainland. "You can rest on that siding, Mike," said Percy. "We'll get your train ready." So Mike puffed over to the siding next to a warehouse to stay until he's ready to leave. The 4 tank engines, however, had to do the job of shunting and loading cars with coal with Diesel, Irate, and Bert, the 3 troublemaking diesels on the island. Mike watched them prepare his train, but as they went on with their work, shunting and heaving cars into place, he started gloating about how strong he is and claims he can haul more cars than anyone else. "How many cars do you engines usually haul?" he says with curiosity. Just about 5 or 8 at maximum most of the time," said Thomas. Mike laughed. "Ha! Is that what you call strong?" he said. "I can haul more cars than that, like 30 or 40, heck, maybe 50 or 75, he said. Judging by his attitude, Thomas and the other engines didn't like how he was talking to them, but didn't want to argue. But Diesel, Ari, and Bert took a liking to him, because he could be good friends with them and the other diesels. "Say, Mike," said Diesel, "why don't you be friends with us, and not those stinky steamers?" "What?" said Thomas. "Why would he be friends with dirty diesels?" he argued reflectively to the 3 diesels. This immediately started an argument between the steam engines and the diesels. Mike was here, listening to both sides bicker about how better each side was, until he had had enough. He blew his whistle and shouted loudly to the clashing engines to stop the fighting. "Yo!" he bellowed. The engines stopped arguing at once. "Ooh, you're gonna get into trouble," Diesel said. But the fault wasn't to the engines. Mike puffed closer to Diesel, Ari, and Bert and confronted them at once. "I've heard many stories about you diesels causing trouble for the engines, and that is going to stop right now," he scolded. "If I hear you 3 cause any trouble for anyone, then I'll make sure you're sorry. Do you understand me? Do you understand me?" The diesels understood in a state of shock. Mike soon backed up into his resting spot, leaving his confrontation to not only shock the diesels, but the other engines too. They later finished the job without a word said on each side. Mike coupled up to the long coal train and puffed away, feeling very pleased with himself. That confrontation he evoked on the diesel seemed to teach them a lesson. But as he puffed away with the long train in tow, the engines can't help but to dislike Mike for his behavior. "That engine as sure has got a mouth," said Rosie crossly. "And an engine with such a threatening temper," added Thomas. Even the diesels had to agree. Now, Mike has shown us that he's very prideful at the job he does, as well as being quite confrontational. But what about being violent? He might show us this soon. Anyway, Mike puffed along the main line swiftly, but the troublesome trucks began to grow bored of the long journey and began plotting their tricks. The trucks started their tricks simple. They held him back, but Mike was so strong that the trucks couldn't slow him down and barely felt resistance. The trucks then tried to put their brakes on to increase the drag, but that was no use. He was still too strong to them to slow down. The resistance increased a tad bit. "Straighten up back there," Mike called to the trucks up front, and then the trucks released their brakes, not wanting to risk getting a heated axle. "All right," said one cross truck, "if we can't hold him back, let's shove him instead." The rest of the trucks agreed, and together they shoved him as hard as they could. Mike felt this shove, and in a fit of rage, he biffed the trucks violently. Bang! Went the buffers as he biffed. The trucks were jolted and biffed and bashed into each other so hard, they all cried out in pain. "Now you listen here," Mike yelled loudly to the trucks. "I ain't gonna deal with your shenanigans as well as your tricks and vengeance. So do that to me one more time, and I swear I'm gonna keep biffing you all so much that you all become unrecognizable. Do you understand me?" The trucks were traumatized beyond belief, and still in excruciating pain, that they behaved and obeyed him at once. "That's what I thought! Never mess with a big irate engine," he shouted again. For the rest of the journey to the big city, the troublesome trucks were too afraid to play any more games and feared that the threat Mike gave them would be real. Some decided to go to sleep to make the journey go faster, while others watched the world go by as they traveled. Now, every wise engine knows to never trust freight cars or biff them, or else they might cause tricks that will bite the victimized engine in the rear buffer beam. And the troublesome trucks would get back at an engine if they biff them as a way to get them under control. But that starts from mischief to chaos. But I'm afraid that they found a troublesome, at least to them, an irate engine that put them all in their place so badly that they all know how to think twice before playing any tricks again. It was dark when Mike pulled into the big train yard outside the big city. He puffed into the big sidings and was uncoupled from the long coal train. "Hope that confrontation I did to you trucks made you learn a lesson," Mike said to the trucks grimly. The trucks, petrified in trauma and worry, apologized to him for their trickery. But all Mike said was, and puffed away to find a turntable for his return journey. Another long line of trucks sat in an adjacent siding, but facing the opposite way, and were spaced 3 tracks from the other line of the trucks Mike dropped off. "Oi, mate, what happened?" said one truck. The other truck from the dropped-off consist replied in a shaky voice, "Whatever you do, I would think twice than messing with him," he said, still shaken. "Really?" said the truck. "What happened to you guys?" And so, the shaken truck told the other trucks what had happened. The trucks were shocked and furious at this news. "We should pay him out," said another, filled with anger. But just then, Mike puffed back to collect the other trucks. His throaty steam wheezing intimidated the trucks so unexpectedly that those who wanted to pay him out thought otherwise. He soon backed down onto his train, coupled up, and returned to Sodor. The sun slowly started to rise as he made the return journey back to Sodor. And along the whole way back, the trucks didn't play not one trick. knowing how violent he was if they did so. I don't know. Considering what Mike has shown us, I feel like he's better off without friends. Why? Because no other engine would want to be around a big, grim, and maleficent engine like him to inflict fear and trauma to another innocent engine.